Welcome to part 63 of my video series on how to use Blender 2.7. In this video I'll be showing you how to actually animate a face texture, the mouth and the eyes, on the surface of this Lego character based on a piece of audio, probably dialogue, that you actually bring into Blender. If you've not seen the last video in the series, in the last video I showed you how to actually set up this face texture animation rig, so I'll put a link to that video on the screen right now and in the description area below. Let's go ahead and jump in. I've actually just rearranged the windows since the last video in my Blender interface, so I've got a timeline at the bottom still, but I have two windows, one looking through my camera, which I have selected right now, and then this window I'm actually going to change around a little bit. I'm going to press 1 to go to my front view directly, and right now we're not in material viewport shading, so I'll change that down here from solid to material so I can actually see the face textures in this sort of control panel area over here. And what I would do if I were you, if I was animating a face, I would actually make it so that you have a separate window at all times that sort of just has this control panel up. Even if you're zoomed out, even if you have other windows around it, I would keep it up on the screen so you can kind of see where your mouth poses and eye poses are. What I need to do here is actually divide my screen up a little bit more though, because I need a few more windows to bring in audio. I'm going to make this timeline down here, which I do need. Still, I'll make it a bit taller though, and I'm going to divide it up into 2 more windows. So I'll keep a timeline at the bottom, but I'll make 2 more windows just by grabbing this little crosshatched area and dragging it down. I'm going to change this next window into a dope sheet window, and the window above that into a video sequence editor. And if you've watched any of my videos in creating visual effects in Blender, then you would know what this window is. It actually has a few different kind of view modes. It has just a pure video screen mode, it has just the sequencer, and it has a combination of the 2, video and sequencer. In this case, we're just going to be using the feature that this window has, which you can bring in audio files into Blender. So I'll do that now. I'm going to press add down here, and I'm going to add or bring into Blender a sound file from my computer. Now I've already gone ahead and recorded a piece of dialogue that you might have actually seen in my I'm a Little Teapot Lego Person animation. I'll put a link to that on the screen right now and in the description area below. I'm actually going to grab that same piece of audio right from my desktop. It's a wave recording, and I recorded that in an audio recording program called Audacity, which is a free program for Windows and Mac, and I believe even Linux. So I'll bring that sound strip or sound file into this window. When you first bring it in, it doesn't quite look very nice. I'm going to drag the ends of these scroll bars down and up so I can see this and make it a little bit taller. Now if your playhead is somewhere besides frame 1 or frame 0, that's where your audio clip is going to be. So I'm just going to press G with this audio strip selected and move it down, and you can see when I move it that I can see exactly where that number is. I'm starting it now at frame 1, which is what I want. I'd prefer to actually see the waveforms of the audio, and that's just here under the view menu, and it is called waveform drawing, and I want to turn it always on, waveforms on. So now I can actually see the dialogue, and if I scrub through though, you can see that I don't hear anything. And this is sort of crucial to animation. I can see where my words are, and if I kind of knew what I was saying, or what the dialogue was saying, I could guess, but really you want to scrub through and kind of hear the sounds as they pass over the green line. So the way you do that is actually not in this window, it's down here in the timeline. Under playback, you can enable audio scrubbing right there. So now if I scrub through, I'm a little teapot. You can hear the audio, and you can actually hear the individual sounds as they're playing. So that's exactly what I need. What I want to do now though, before I start actually animating, and I could right now, but that would be a process of me actually moving these 2 bones around to the individual locations of the mouths, and there is a quicker way. That's actually how I did it for my I'm a Little Teapot animation, but there is a quicker way. We can use a feature of armatures and bones called a pose library. We can create a pose library, which is just like what it sounds. It's a library of poses, so we can actually preset the location of all of these mouths, or where the bone should be, to make these mouths show up on the character. Let's go ahead and do that. In my properties window right here, I'm going to create a pose library for this bone, which is the bone that we're going to be moving around for the mouth. I'm going to zoom in on that section, And under the Armature tab, there is a section called Pose Library. We're going to make a pose library for this bone, so with it selected, I'll click on New. I'm going to call it PL2, dot mouth. That's just sort of my naming convention. Now with this bone selected, I'm going to press this plus button and click on add new, and that's going to create a new pose with this bone in this location. I'm going to double click and name this pose angry, and I'm going to move that bone over to the next spot. Now I don't have snapping turned on, so I'll right click. I'm going to turn snapping on, so now it'll snap to the vertices that I've got in this plane. So I'll press G and put the bone right there. I'll make a new pose with this bone in this location. I'll press plus, and I gotta press plus and click on add new, and this pose is going to be called grin closed. And so this is a fairly simple process. It is a bit time consuming. There is a way you can make it faster though if you move the bone to the next location. And by the way, I'm actually starting purposely up here in the top left and then going down because when we use this pose library, we can use a keyboard shortcut, which I'll show you in just a second, where you can use a keyboard shortcut and then just scroll on your mouse to make this bone move around between the different poses. It's great, trust me. The keyboard shortcut to making these poses is I've got this bone at the new location. I'm going to press Shift L. Shift L will let you bring up this pose, add pose, or pose lib, add pose menu. You can click on add new, and that will make a new pose. So now I'll press G, move it over, Shift L, add new, move it over to the next one, Shift L, add new. So I can go through quite quickly, make all the poses, and then name them, and because they're in order, it should be pretty easy. I'm going to speed up the video now and do that very quickly. Okay, so I've gone through and I've made all of my poses. They're not named yet, and so I'm going to go through quickly. I'll speed up the video again, and I'm going to name all these poses, and just because they're in order, I know that the next one, this one, happens to be the crying one, so I'll go through very quickly, sped up in this video. Alright, I've named all of my different poses for this bone based on the sounds that they make. So as you can see, I named some of them like the UQW, that's this pose right there. Those are the sounds that you'd be making when you would use that mouse shape. So there you go. Let's go ahead and repeat the same process with the eye rig. I'm going to select this bone. I'm going to create a new library. I'm going to put the bone in the first position, no matter what it is. In this case, it happens to be the round circles. I'm going to press Shift L. I'm going to add new, and I'll do the same process. I'm going to go through very quickly now and put the bone in all the different poses and then name them all very quickly. Alright, so I've got this pose library created. I've put all the different poses in. I've named them all. I'm going to name this pose library pl.eyes. I'll do a quick save, Control S, and then click. Great. Now I can actually start animating. So what I'll do is I'll zoom out in this window and kind of pan it over and make it as small as I can while still being able to see everything. What you can do now is go back to the beginning of your animation, and you're going to set the first pose of your, and we'll do the mouth animation first, and then we'll go through after that, and we'll do the eyes. We'll just go through one or so words of the animation, and we'll switch over to the eyes so you'll get an idea. So let's go ahead, and at the first keyframe, I'm going to turn on the record button down here. Now by default, I believe when you're animating objects, it puts a keyframe in for the location, the rotation, and the scale of an object that you're animating. It's called loc-rot scale for location, rotation, scale. I don't need that. I'm only doing movement here. So down here, I'm in this little area, I can click and I can specify what kind of keyframes I want to add automatically. And so I'm only going to add in location information of these bones that I'm animating. So I'm going to pose the first mouth position, and I'm not going to grab this bone. Instead, with it selected, I'm going to press Control L. And when I press Control L, I can now scroll on my mouse. You can see this is the power of a pose library. When you scroll on your mouse after pressing Control L, it'll actually let you kind of scroll through all your different poses in your pose library. So I'm going to start off with my mouse at a smile position. I'll click right there. And as you can see, as soon as I click after pressing Control L and putting it in the right spot by scrolling, it puts a new keyframe in right at frame 1. I'm going to scrub now. So you can hear the beginning of the dialogue. I'll go back to the beginning of the dialogue. And right about there, I want to change the mouth position to the I sound. So I believe that's this one right here. So I'll press Control L. I'll scroll my mouse down, I'll click, and it put in a keyframe. So now I'll go back to the beginning and kind of scrub through. Now, something bad here is happening. It's moving the texture, but the bone is just moving around. I want it to stay still at the current mouth until it gets to the next keyframe where it's at a different mouth. This is called the interpolation mode, and this is one of the reasons why we have this dope sheet editor window open. What I'll do is with these two keyframes selected, I can press A a few times to make sure they're selected. I'm going to press T on my keyboard. T will bring up the set keyframe interpolation, or you can just go down to key and interpolation mode. I'm going to set these keyframes to constant. By default, I believe they're Bezier. Constant means exactly what we want. We don't want the object to change its location until it gets to the next keyframe, so there's no sort of in-between frames at all. So now if I scrub through, you can see that the mouse stays at that close pose until it gets to the next pose. Let's keep going. I'll scrub through. So right there, it went to the M position. So I'm going to press Control L. I'm going to scroll up until I get to the right M pose. And let's go ahead and scrub back and scrub through. So right there, we're at the sound, AH. So I can use either that mouth or that mouth, but I'll press Control L. I'm going to use that one because he's supposed to be more happy than sort of not happy or upset or kind of screaming in that one. So let's go ahead and see how that looks. So after the sound, it's an L sound. So I'll press Control L, and then I'll scroll down to get to the L pose. I'll click. So let's go and change the mouth now to the I sound, which is approximately that one, so Control L. So as you can see, this is a fairly simple process. You can get through some dialogue fairly quickly if you're not explaining it like me as I go. Let's go ahead and keep going. So right there is the T sound. I'll press Control L. I'll scroll to my T pose. Let's keep going. I'll go to the L, Control L, go to right there. So I'm going to stop right there. You can see how this goes. Because we had the dope sheet editor window open, I can go through and I can move any of these keyframes, go back. I can move any of these keyframes. I can go back later and play through it and change any of them just by going, let's say, to that keyframe, and I can press Control L and put it at some other pose that I want instead. I'll press Control Z though. Same thing goes with the eyes. I'm going to select that eye bone, which you have to do in order to use Control L. And because I have this bone selected now and I don't want to see all these keyframes, this button right here at the bottom of the dope sheet lets you show only the keyframes that you have on the currently selected object, which is super handy. If you didn't know what that button does, that's what it does. You can only now see the keyframes on this. And again, there are no keyframes, so I'll just start off. This is the wrong eye. I'll press Control L. Again, I still have record turned on. And I'm going to scroll up back to the beginning. I'm actually going to make him a little bit happier at the beginning. Great, I've made keyframes. Oops, that keyframe is in the wrong spot because our playhead was at the wrong spot. I'll press G with that keyframe selected to put it back at the beginning. And the thing about eyes is that you don't want to move them directly or change them directly corresponding to your words. This is more acting, so eyes are actually harder. You'll notice that in my animation, if you've watched it, of him singing I'm a Little Teapot, the point of that video was that he did not see you watching him singing and dancing until right when he freezes in kind of a panic. So he's mostly in a squinty or eyes shut pose. I have a few more eye poses here than I had when I made that animation, so you have more options if you download the file at the beginning of this video. The last thing I'll say is that at the end of the last video, I forgot to do one thing with this control panel. I'll make my outliner window a little bit bigger, and these two planes, I can still select them. I think I changed that in the last video. They are right here, plane and plane.001. I'm going to make it so that you cannot select them, and I don't want to have them actually show up in our final render, so I'm going to click and disable these two cameras. So now when you actually render out your scene, you won't see the bones because you can't see bones when you render, and you can't see now these two planes of the control panel because they are in the 3D world. Although if you go to rendered viewport shading, I'll just break out of the camera for a moment. If you change your window to viewport shading rendered, you will still see them. Don't worry, they won't show up in your final render. That will be it for this video. Please don't forget to like this video if you learned something. Subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos like this in Blender and in tech. Please don't forget to check out my Facebook page at facebook.com/borencg. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.